One of the biggest barriers to actually saving money, putting money into savings, is remembering to do it. We get paid, salary comes in, some of it goes to bills, some of it goes just everyday spending, maybe a few nights out, a few luxuries. And then by the time we get to the end of the month, it's like, oh, where's it all gone? And then we get paid again, and the cycle kind of keeps repeating. But we can break that. We can make sure that you are putting money into savings every single month. So make sure you don't just spend it because it's there, and it sits separately in a nice little pot, nice and protected. You can dip into it when you want, obviously, but it's when it's there, it's less likely to spend on it, and you can see that it is kind of growing, and that also motivates you to save more if you can. And there are ways to do this which are really, really, really low effort. In fact, there's ways of doing it so it automatically happens that you don't even have to think about it on the most part. So the number one way I would do this is not high tech. It's something that's been around for decades and decades and decades, but I still think it's the best thing you can do. And this is to set up something called a standing order. A standing order is very simply a transfer from your current account into another current account or another savings account or whatever it might be. And ultimately what you should be doing here is transferring this money, the standing order that you set up, transferring your money that you've got that you can afford to save into an account which is ideally it's paying the best possible interest. There are obviously different types of savings accounts you might want to consider, where it's easy access so you can get it, notice where you have to give like 60, 90, 120 days notice before you can access that cash, or maybe short-term fixes, or probably one of the best ones I think for savings accounts is use a regular saver where the same amount goes in every single month, and often you can't access it for a year, but they give you some of the top paying rates. Now you can find the best of all those different ones at becleverwithyourcash.com/savings. Broadly speaking, you set the standing order up into your other savings account, whatever it might be, and it does it. Every month, the same amount goes. Now, I said it has to be how much you can afford. So what you want to do here is have a look at your budgets. If you haven't done a budget already, that's fine. Just have a quick look at how much you're normally spending every single month on those essentials. So your rent or mortgage, your bills, your commuting costs, a little bit of money there, obviously, for those discretionary spending, the nights out, the meals out, the clothes, whatever it might be. Work out what you would like to spend or need to spend on those areas, and what's left over from your salary. That is what you can put into savings. Now, you might want to adjust this. You can adjust your standing order quite easily in your banking apps and online banking, but set that up, have that money move over on the same day every single month, and you have already saved. You have automated the saving because it goes across. Now, I would do this a couple of days after payday, simply because paydays obviously can move, sometimes depending on if it happens on the weekend or a bank holiday. So give yourself a couple of days after. Obviously, if you know that your salary comes in on exactly the same day every single month, then you can do it for that day. But I would give yourself 2 or 3 days wiggle room to account for those things, and then have that money moved to that separate account. Nice and simple. You're absolutely saving every single month. That is the best one you should do, the number one thing you should think of. After this, we move on to some of the more sort of the newer high-tech options you can go for. And something I really, really like is kind of an AI version of savings, where a couple of different apps will connect to your current account, and they will analyze your spending, they'll analyze your income, and they will look at how things are going. This will vary from week to week, and go, right, based on what's happened with your finances this week and in previous weeks, we think that you can afford to save this amount of money. And unless you say no, they will automatically move that money into a separate savings account. It happens without you even knowing. Obviously, if you suddenly realize you're short of cash, you need to make sure you do keep an eye on your bank balance, which you should be doing anyway. You can take some of that money back, or you can say you can pause these and stop them. You can change the frequency or the size of them. You can make them super aggressive, or you can make them relatively low effort. But again, really, really good thing to be sort of having operating in the background. Now, there are 3 key ones that do this. Plum is my top pick here. Plum is a really, really good option for this because it is free. It won't charge you anything at all. You connect your account to it, and it just works away in the background. Now, the interest rate isn't amazing at the time of recording this on Plum, so you may want to regularly sort of go into your Plum account and then transfer that money again into a different savings account, which does offer a higher rate of interest. But in terms of actually making this happen, I think it's the best one out there. Chip was the originator of this, the first one that did this, and the one that I used for a long, long time. But sadly, that is no longer free. There are charges every time you auto save. And I'm like, well, why would you do that when you can do it for free? So if you are using Chip for auto savings, I would stop doing that and move over to Plum. The other one to look at is called Sprive. Works in the same way. The difference here is the money will go towards your overpaying your mortgage. So again, it's not going to be for everyone. Again, I would think probably better to go for Plum. And then if you want to overpay your mortgage, then use some of your savings for that. But if you like the idea of that, then it's certainly one to consider as well. The next type of auto saving to think about is something called roundups. And there are a huge number of different banks currently offering this. In fact, even if your bank doesn't do it, you can do it via Plum. So there's no reason if you want to do this, you can't do it. Now, the idea behind roundups is when you use the debit card connected to your current account, let's say you spend £1.60, well, it would round up to the nearest pound. So 40 pence would go, £1.60 goes to the merchant, 40 pence from your current account will go into your savings account. And then that also is a nice way for money just to small, there's pennies, but the more you spend, the more these things kind of add up, and they will, over time, give you a little bit extra cash in your savings pot. Now, there are only really a couple of ones that I would consider using this for. And that is because when you're doing this, you obviously have to use the debit card connected to that current account. But there are very, very, very few debit cards that are going to be earning you cash back. In fact, really, we're only talking about one or two here. And that means you're losing out on the cashback, the 1% cashback that you might be able to get, say with Chase or similar rates at a couple of others. Or you might be using a cashback credit card alternatively, or you might be using a hack such as discounted gift cards to buy certain things. So really, if you're using your debit card just for roundups, you're missing out on other features elsewhere. But I said there are a couple that are worth looking at. One of them is Chase. Now, there are two reasons why the Chase debit card roundup is a really good feature. One, you are earning a 1% cash back on all your spending. So you're winning there straight away. But two, the money it goes into, the accounts where the roundups move into, earn you 5%, which is a very, very good rate of interest. It's technically a regular saver, so it only lasts for 12 months. Then after a year, you have to start again. But even so, you're earning 5% on that roundup for the duration that it's in your account. And that is really, really hard to beat. The best easy access accounts you've got out there are not going to be paying too much more than that at the time of recording. So this is definitely a good one to be thinking about. The other one that you might want to consider here, if you have a NatWest account, is when you do a roundup from a NatWest or RBS actually debit card, that money can go towards their digital regular saver. A digital regular saver pays 6.17% at the moment. And that is a nice way of getting more money into that account because your monthly deposits there are normally capped at 150 quid a month. So this is a way for you to get more money in there, earning what is a particularly high rate of interest. Other than that, I probably wouldn't bother with any of the roundup features, but I'll give you a quick rundown of some of the banks where you can do this. So we have got this at Halifax, Lloyds, Bank of Scotland, Monzo, Nationwide. Who else we got here? Revolut, Starling, TSB. They all have this feature. Also, separate apps. Moneybox does this as well. You can connect your card to that. But that is probably, again, not one to go for, I would say here, simply because you might be getting better interest rates elsewhere. Or there is Plum, as we mentioned earlier on. Plum will pick up all those other current accounts that don't have the feature themselves. But certainly if you have a Chase or NatWest, I certainly would be thinking about it, or connect your normal debit card via Plum, and you get that happening at the same time. Now, there's one last type of auto savings that I want to share with you. And I think this is kind of potentially quite exciting if you have a Monzo account. And this is by connecting your Monzo current account to a service called IFTT, if this then that. And if this then that is basically a tool where when something happens, that if this, then something else happens, then that. And the then that, in the case of this sort of auto savings, is you move money to one of your Monzo savings pots. That's what happens as a result. But the actions that you can create are there are so many different options here. Because it's not just about what's happening in your Monzo app, it's what's happening in other kind of apps you've got on your phone. So it could be about the weather. It links into a weather app, and every time it rains, you can move money into a rainy day fund. It could be location based. So if you enter into, I like to think of it maybe like a penalty. You tax yourself, right? Every time you go into, I don't know, McDonald's, you know you shouldn't do it, but you're spending money at McDonald's. The map shows that you're in McDonald's, or potentially even that they can use the actual merchant itself could be a trigger. Then money moves over to a separate savings pot. And so many things you can be doing with this, and there are already some preset ones, or you can create your own. So it's definitely something to think about if you have Monzo. In fact, some of the most popular IFTT pre-populated ones happening within the Monzo account are linked to savings challenges. Now, I'm not always the biggest fan of these ones. The idea on the most popular one is you save 1p on the first day, 2p on the second day, 3p on the third day, and so on like that. There are all sorts of different options. But with Monzo, you can do it automatically. So the if this trigger is the day of the week. So every day changes, money gets put aside. So you are saving some money every single day. And you can set up your own version of this or see what other people have put on the kind of effectively like almost mini marketplace. Again, great way for you to making sure you are saving without making any effort into it every single day, every week, or whenever things are happening. Plum, should be fair to say, does have a version of that 1p challenge and things like that, but you have to pay for that tier of Plum for that, and I wouldn't bother with that. But certainly if you've got Monzo, have a play with that, see what things you can set up. One last thing to say though, as much as auto savings are fantastic and great ways for you to get more money in your current account, doesn't mean you shouldn't also just be checking back to see if you can afford to save more from your everyday kind of income and everyday spending, because it might be you've got a change, you've got a pay rise, you might have had a quiet week, quiet month where you've not done as much. Again, you can go into your account and manually just transfer that money into your savings account in order to kind of really boost those coffers. My name's Andy Webb. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these videos for more ways to boost your savings.